presentation for April 30th, 2024. We're going to start off with the presentation tonight from the Hastings Way Coalition. Chris, you want to?
I can just be brief, and then Linda will take it from there. One of the very good things that I learned when I got to Hastings is that every other year since I think 2019, if I have the exact date, but you can correct me, there's been an every other year survey of students as to substance use, et cetera. My previous district did that, and it was very, very important. And I'm going to be personal for a second. I started my career in 1981 at North Mount Hermon School, big boarding school. And boarding schools, particularly then, were known for having all kinds of behavior. And I worked at a school that immediately stressed honesty, that we were going to be clear. So we became known a bit as the druggie school. And I knew for a fact that we were no more the druggie school than any one of these incredibly fine boarding schools out there. But I was trained at the young age of 21 to be open and honest. So I'm very pleased that we're open and honest, because that's the only way to helping students, young people, make the best decisions possible. So without further ado, I'm glad we've got the multi-year data. I think there's some helpful news in here, meaning some flatness or drops that you want to see. There's areas of concern. But going back to my personal story, if we don't look at it eyes wide open, it's no help to anybody. So I appreciate Hastings already have been down this path. And Linda, it's yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for inviting me to present the results of our latest Youth Needs Assessment Survey. My name is Linda Facina, and I am the Coalition Coordinator for the WAY, which is Hastings Youth Drug and Alcohol Prevention Coalition. And we're made up of many organizations in the community. We have members of the school staff, Chris Rapp and Terry, Terry Frank, the school social workers. Eliana is a member of the SAG Club, is kind of our youth group of the coalition, and there are parents, care workers, government, the police, so it's just really representative of all areas of the community. And the last time I was here, which was 2 years ago, we really saw some large decreases, and that we were kind of all questioning what were they due to. Was it all as a result of COVID, or was something else happening? And at that time, we said we're not really going to know until we have these results. So I'm really happy to share it with you tonight, and we can answer the questions as to if it was all COVID or not. So I just ask, I'm going to be presenting a lot of data, and I welcome your questions, but I will ask, unless it's really, something pressing, that we try to hold them to the end, just so I can get through everything. The slides are numbered, and so if you want to just note what number slide it is, I can happily go back to it at the end of the presentation. So the background for our survey is that we are in the second 5 years of a 10-year grant. So we received our grant in 2018, and in September of 2023, we reapplied for another 5 years, and unfortunately, that is the final 5 years. DFC grants can only last for 10 years. We're required, as one of our grant requirements, to collect this data every 2 years, and we have been doing it. It was actually, you were close, Superintendent. It was March 2017 is when we started. Today. So every 2 years, 2017, 19, 21, and then our most recent data from 2023. And 8th, 10th, and 12th are surveyed. The instrument we use is to determine patterns of use and perceptions of harm. We use the same survey instrument. We've used the exact same survey instrument, so it's really great to compare the data from one year to the next. And it helps the coalition target specific prevention intervention strategies. And this year, as was done in 2021, the students took the survey electronically on their Chromebooks. And the only other thing I really want to mention with this is that there are validity checks. I didn't include that on the slide, but the survey does have some validity checks built in to ensure reliability. This is just very brief, just a slide showing the participation rate, which you can see is really high. We're above 85% in all grades, 90% total, which is incredibly high. So that also is a mark of reliability in the data that we see. So this slide is a summary, and it's combining 8th, 10th, and 12th grade just to, show an overall picture through the years for the substances. Is it still working? The substances that are most used by Hastings youth. So you can see top is alcohol in yellow, second is marijuana, then e-cigarettes, and then at the bottom is cigarettes. And I'm kind of giving you the big news. If you see from 2021 to 2023, those numbers really held pretty steady, which I am thrilled about. It's very possible they could have popped right back up after COVID to what we were seeing in 2019, and I'm really, really happy to see that those reductions stayed. This is the same line for alcohol, but we're now comparing it to binge drinking. And am I too close to this? Too bad? Okay.
I don't think it's you, though.
It's not me? Okay, fine. So binge drinking is defined as drinking 5 or more drinks in a row, and that is the concerning type of high-risk drinking that we really are happy to see declining even further from 2021 to 2023. The next bunches of slides are going to all be similar and look at each substance individually. So this first one is for alcohol, and we're comparing for all 4 years that we've done the survey for each grade. So this is just looking into the specific data a little more detailed. And again, you see that there were slight increases in 10th and 12th grade, but in general, the numbers stayed pretty low compared to the higher rates that we were seeing in 2017 and 2019. Okay. Just making sure I don't have any other notes I wanted to say. And again, this is for binge drinking, which is again a great slide. There's significant decreases, and particularly interesting in 12th grade that the numbers even went lower than in 2021. So that's, I think it's really positive. We do have still, even though we've seen significant decreases with alcohol, that is the substance that's most misused by youth. Our numbers still are fairly high compared to other communities in the area, but especially the reduction in binge drinking is encouraging. This slide is about access. So the question, I can almost not read it, but if you drank alcohol, not just a sip or taste in the past year, how did you get it? So the thing to note with this slide is these are only students who reported drinking within the past year. So it does not represent the entire cohort of students. And we tried to be very clear with that by writing the percentage as well as the number of students that represents. But I want to point out that since we are only looking at 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, this should not be looked at as the entire population of the school. But we use it to show just in general where kids are getting alcohol, and we can see it's mostly from parties, from someone that they know under age 21, or concerning, I believe, is at home with their parents' permission. So that's quite a high number and something that we need to look into a little bit further. And I will also point out, you're going to see lots of slides that look like this. The numbers definitely do not add to 100 because the kids can check off multiple responses. And a very similar slide, not how they get alcohol, but where they use it. And the highest 3 are at their home with their parents' permission. This is something I've talked to the superintendent. I really would love to do some focus groups just to try to delve into what this means. It is supposed to be more than just a sip or taste. And what's especially interesting is that if you look at 8th, 10th, and 12th, it's similar percentages for this question. So it's not just the older grades, which is usually who we're seeing reporting alcohol use. So that's an interesting finding we need to look into a little more. more expected would be at their home or someone else's home without any parent permission. And then the third area is an open area like a park, beach, or back road. So now we'll move on to marijuana. You'll see the same sets of slides. So again, marijuana use decreased in 8th and 10th grade and increased slightly in 12th grade. The other thing I wanted to point out, when they ask, have you used, I should have pointed out, in the past 30 days is representative of current use. In the survey world for these kind of questions, when they ask if you've used in the last 30 days, they're considering that current use. And across the country, youth substance use rates have decreased, like we're seeing here. But what is concerning, especially with marijuana, is they're finding that the incidence rates are much higher. So there's much higher near daily or daily use, even though the numbers of students using has decreased. But in Hastings, we could analyze that data, and 20% of that 44 is only 5 times or less in the past month. So that was positive to see that it's not a huge, every day. So, there are some, and that's the concern, but not a large majority of that 44%. And here's the same slide about marijuana access. Where did you get marijuana? They got it from someone they know under 21, at a party, or they gave someone else money to buy it for me. So students don't seem, at this point, at least not a large number, are buying it from dispensaries. Where students use marijuana is at an open area. That's the number one, is outdoors. And second is at their home or someone else's home, and third is in a car. And what I wanted to show here is, unlike, I didn't point it out, but in the slide that talked about alcohol, there was the very last one, which was 0, was at school during the day. And here, for marijuana use, it's a small number, but there is some use reported at school during the day or near school. And that's, again, another number that we'd like to reduce and work with the school to try to reduce that. We'll move to e-cigarettes. Again, very similar decreases since the very, very high rates we saw in 2019. So I personally hope that fad is going away, but it's even lower than COVID. Or at least in 12th grade. 10th grade did see a slight increase. Where students are vaping, at their friends' houses, at their own homes, or in public places like parks, shopping malls. In a car is down a little bit further, and then there are a small percentage that report in school bathrooms and in school areas other than bathrooms. So we also want to know, as you may be aware, that it's not just nicotine which students can vape. They can also vape marijuana. So there was a question asking, it's interesting, not everybody knows. There's a not sure, was almost the same as marijuana, was pretty much split equally with nicotine. But I think the positive, this is again all year grades combined, 81% of kids are not vaping. So I think that's also a good positive thing to see. And then we'll move to cigarettes, which very happy to see these numbers very low. We still see a little bit of use in the 12th grade, but it did come down slightly from 2021. And then prescription drugs. This is prescription drugs that are not prescribed to you. So in 2021, it was 0 across the board, which was amazing. The numbers have gone up slightly, and for seniors have gone to 4%. That's still a low number, but it's concerning because I'm sure you've all heard of fentanyl and all of the prescription pills that are being made with fentanyl. So it can just take one, really, it's just scary, right? It's a scary situation. And I want to make sure, we talked, the superintendent and I talked about reviewing the health curriculum, just because mainly I don't know what it is. So I'd like to learn what the drug education is, and I'm sure the kids are being taught about fentanyl, but it's super important that they just know never to even try a pill once that didn't come from a pharmacy and was prescribed to them. So the next bunches of slides are all about perceptions. We have a perception of risk, and then we'll talk about perception of parent disapproval and perception of friend disapproval. So this is a rather busy slide, but there are different questions about how much do you think people risk harming themselves, physically or in other ways. And the one thing I always want to point out with this is that we don't get to make up these questions. The Drug-Free Communities Grant require that we ask certain questions in certain ways. And so what is interesting about this one, I think, is that alcohol use is measured as binge drinking, because they're asking how risky do you think it is if students drank 5 or more drinks of an alcoholic beverage once or twice a week. And that's compared to smoking marijuana once or twice a week, or cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and then prescription drugs. And you can see the numbers are all pretty high, but certainly this is going to be a theme with all of these risks. It's specifically marijuana in 12th grade. The perception of risk is just not there. And that certainly makes sense with the legalization movement, but in seniors, only 30% found that using marijuana once or twice a week they'd consider that a risk, in either a moderate or great risk. And that's something we'd like to work on. However, the numbers have increased. So this slide just shows for alcohol from 2021, this is, separated by 8th are yellow, 10th blue, and 12th are green. Even though the perception of risk, it was high for alcohol, but it went even higher from 2021 to 2023. Pretty much stayed the same for 8th grade, but it went up for 10th and 12th. And for marijuana, particularly that 10th grade one is wonderful. That's a nice steep increase. And we want to see perception of risk high, because the more students believe something is risky, the less inclined they are to do that behavior, when it comes to substance use at least. Same questions, although asked just slightly different. This one for alcohol is if you've had 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol nearly every day, so even more, but would your parents disapprove? And you can see really high numbers across the board for all substances. Again, 12th grade marijuana takes a bit of a dip. And then alcohol use remains high in all grades. The students really believe their parents, I hope, would disapprove of them drinking daily. And marijuana use has also increased in 12th grades, a little bit slightly in 10th grade, and 8th grade has remained high. And this is all about how wrong do you think your friends would think it would be for you to do certain behaviors. So we see, once again, marijuana is lowest. It drops in 10th grade and then drops again in 12th grade. And also e-cigarettes are not, there's still more than half of kids are saying that it's wrong or very wrong, but not as many as are concerned about cigarette use or misuse of prescription drugs. Same slides about friends' disapproval has remained fairly high. I think we don't see a lot of changes from 2021 to 2023. Maybe some slight decreases, but it's pretty steady. And marijuana use has increased friends' disapproval rates. So, if I can read this, these are the summary. Actually, I'm going to not read every single word of this. Let me just give you an overall summary. Just find where I am here. So in summary, 8th graders' substance use rates are low across the board. There is some alcohol use, but in general, they're pretty low. And in 10th and 12th grade, the use rates stayed level with the decreases that we saw in 2021. Misuse of prescription drugs is very low, and the perceptions of risk have increased for almost all substances, and particularly parental disapproval rates are high for all substances. The challenges and areas where we want to work: alcohol continues to be the most misused substance by youth in Hastings and everywhere, and is of concern is the high number of youth who reported drinking at home with their parents' permission. Another concern is marijuana use that increased in 12th grade, and the perception of risk for seniors continues to be very low. And although the numbers are low, there is reported use of marijuana and e-cigarettes at school. I didn't highlight the vaping at school, but that was also a low number, similar with marijuana. So now I'm going to just highlight some of the activities that the WAY Coalition is doing to address substance misuse. One of our goals is to raise awareness and educate the community, and we do this with weekly social media posts on our Facebook page. We do trainings. We recently had a screenagers showing that we didn't have the hugest. I think it's very difficult to get people to come out to things in person, but I was able to provide a link, and there were quite a number of people who signed up to watch it after the fact. We also have a presentation scheduled for the fall in cooperation with the PTSA around social media and screen time. We started a new program this year called Tips by Text, which was, I thought was a great way to reach parents. Actually, they received text messages on their phones if they signed up, and we had about 100 parents sign up, and we'd like to continue that into future years. And it just was a very easy way to reach people with our messages and give them links to great articles, and they didn't have to come out at night. They just showed up right on their phone. And I hope we did a little survey. I haven't gotten the results yet, just to see what people thought of that program. Also, No to Prevent is a collaboration. There are luckily lots of coalitions, such as the one in Hastings in Westchester County, and we work together to provide parent education with online webinars. Another one of our strategies is to reduce availability and promote safe disposal. So we hold take-back days. There was one just held at the end of April. We work with the police department on that. We worked with the pharmacy with Greenleaf on safe disposal. And we do Narcan trainings, just so that the community is educated about the dangers of fentanyl and can carry Narcan. And in fact, that's something that I'm jumping ahead, but that's something I'd be happy to do if the school would be interested in providing trainings for staff or students. We also like to support healthy choices. So we've done some media campaigns around the dangers of marijuana. We're very lucky to be invited into the school to work with the students. We did a no smoking or vaping in parks initiative, and just work to provide policies. I'm interested. I know that the school district is very interested in restorative justice, which is something else I'd be happy to work together on, because that's what we are also interested in doing for those that are found to be misusing substances. And then to promote youth leadership and healthy decisions, I already mentioned the SAG Club. I'm hoping we're gonna lose our leader next year when Chris Rep retires, but hopefully somebody will step up to run that club, because they really are, as a youth substance use prevention organization, it's critical that we have access to youth. I mean, they are our voices. They are how we do campaigns and education, and the SAG Club has been our youth arm. So I'm very interested and hope that that club continues in some way. We're doing it again. We've done prom bags. We've worked with, some youth leadership training, the CODA conference that Eliana, CODA is co-occurring disorders. So for students that are suffering from both mental health challenges as well as substance misuse, which totally go hand in hand. There's a leadership conference around that. And then finally, this is our last slide and just some of our planned prevention strategies. So we certainly want to continue to raise awareness about the issue of youth substance use in Hastings. We have some plans for environmental scans and a project of photo voice, which is something we've been trying to get off the ground for a couple of years, haven't quite gotten there. We want to collect additional data to better understand the local conditions. So we have done a community survey. In addition to the youth survey, we survey the community and get their perspectives, and we would like to do some focus groups to really dive into some of this data and understand it a little better. Continue to increase students' perception of the risk of harm, and as I mentioned, review the existing health curriculum, maybe consider, depending on what it is, it may be beautiful the way it is, but perhaps there'd be some consideration of inserting some harm reduction training if that is not currently part of the curriculum. And also with all of this great data, we could do a really good social norms campaign, which is, social norms is just really highlighting the fact for students that not everyone is using. And I think that it's shown that most students have a perception that more of their peers are doing a certain behavior than is accurate. So if you can show them the truth, it kind of makes them think like, I don't have to be part, not everybody is doing this. There are lots of kids making healthy choices. We want to certainly continue to work with parents and do presentations like Screenagers, and we would like to continue. I told you we did the text messaging program for the high school this year. We want to continue it and also expand it to the middle school for parents. It was kind of a pilot program this year. Love to offer youth mental health first aid or other trainings that the school might be interested or the community might be interested in. And then finally to work with community partners to encourage healthy alternative student activities. So that concludes the slide presentation. I am happy to answer any questions, go back to any slides that you might want more detail on.
I have a question.
Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Do you want me to ask all of it or just one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just
Start with one.
Okay, let me start with. I have four bucket questions. So I was just wondering, is there some kind of longitudinal studies between the 12th graders when they were in 10th grade, since you did this 2 years ago, and then the 10th graders when they were in 8th grade, just to compare?
So that's basically what you saw here. So ideally, COVID messed us up 1 year. So ideally, when you're doing a survey, obviously you want to keep everything as consistent as possible. So we had been doing the survey, I believe, in the spring in 2017 and 2019. And then we got, 2021, that was just, we could not do it. Like 2 years passed, we wound up using a different cohort of students because we had to push it into the fall of the following year. But the 10th graders the statistics you see for 10th and 12th are the same cohort of students, and going forward, we will continue to do it as long as something doesn't interrupt us horribly, but our goal would be to do it every 2 years at the same time of year, so that you are definitely seeing the trends based on the same cohort of kids.
Okay, thank you. So actually that has weeded off 2 questions.
Good.
So now my final question. So I know that there is no real propensity test for addiction per se, but then there are questionnaires that can determine risk factors that individuals may have. Considering that there's a lot of, some of the results showed parental or family member enabling kids to, use these various kind of drugs, including alcohol, which is a kind of drug. Being that family values are family values, I'm just wondering whether the way coalition, if they should get more funding, could add a kind of questionnaire that becomes a resource to parents that they can say that, okay, I think you should be able to drink or do marijuana, but let me see what your risk factors are, so that they own that kind of responsibility on behalf of their kids. If, I mean,
So there are those types of risk factor questionnaires do exist, and we do point parents. That's something that there's the Partnership for Drug-Free. I always want to mess it up because they changed their name. But the Partnership to End Addiction is what they're currently called, has an amazing website, and there is a risk questionnaire that parents can look at their child's behaviors and help determine whether they need additional assistance. Of course, the safest thing is abstinence. I didn't talk about it, but obviously youth brains are still developing.
correct.
And something that's okay for those that are over 21 is not healthy for those under 21.
Correct.
And so while we would love to see no use, we know that's not really a reality with everyone. So certainly talking about some harm reduction and safer use is a goal. But there are questionnaires. I am sure that the school personnel, the social workers and psychologists I know Chris Rep is trained in SBIRT, which is a way of, asking questions to assess risk. And kids who are found, vaping or whatever, caught with substances, are sent to her for some counseling. But yes, we don't do those surveys ourselves. Truthfully, I'm not a clinician. I wouldn't have the ability to do that, but we certainly can direct parents to resources where those exist.
And my question, it's the final question I had was really for the students, but you don't have to answer it now. But I was just wondering if there is any preventative. I'm aware of how when kids are caught, then they go through all these different support systems, but I was just wondering whether the peer-to-peer influence is happening within the student government body itself, because usually some of these things is because of peer, so there's so much adults can do, but how is the peer-to-peer influence in this work being done by the student leadership body in order to sort of steer clear and also do more of actionable preventative work instead of just, okay, you've now messed up, because when you get into it, it's so more difficult to get out. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
sorry.
that's totally okay. I definitely think that students at our school appreciate student-to-student learning and student-to-student holding each other accountable. And I think that is seen in our school, definitely. Friends hold each other accountable and always want to look out for each other and make sure everyone is safe. In terms of prevention of substance abuse, that's definitely something that SAD Club we've focused on over the past couple years, especially, is how can kids, if we can't prevent it, how can they use it safely? So that's one of the reasons we so heavily push and spread, I don't want to say push, but encourage safe rides in town, which we're so lucky to have, which is our free confidential driving service. That runs Friday and Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. And students, for any reason, not just feeling the need, not just being under the influence or feeling unsafe, for any reason whatsoever, they can call Safe Rides, and it's there.
Thank you. Yeah, safe rides. Is it the same person driving?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's been there for a long time.
Linda, you mentioned you had a concern that with the departure of Chris Rep, that there's going to be a lack of a liaison with SAD. Is that being addressed already? Is that?
I assume, and I shouldn't assume that there isn't going to be one. It's just a question of who's going to run. I know I was told that there's a procedure, I'm sure, within the school when clubs that have or a vacancy in leadership, different, the staff are given the opportunity to step up, but, who knows if someone will. I guess that's I actually I ran the club with her. I would certainly be happy to continue in that role. If no one steps up, I would be willing to run the club myself. But it's a little difficult not being a school personnel. I don't even have access to a lot of the technology to be able to contact the kids. But I'm certainly interested in continuing and very much hope. I've put the seniors on it. I said, you go find some good staff members and encourage them to want to run the club next year. So hopefully somebody will step up. I appreciate that.
If I could ask the students just lightly, are any of these topics covered in any of the PL work that goes on?
PL this year, a little bit. One of the activities we did this year, actually my co and I made, was a sort of mental health substance prevention Jeopardy game. So it covered a bunch of things discussed tonight. Narcan training was included in that. I know Mr. Conweiser, one of the advisors, wants to use the SAD Club's drunk driving video in future PL lessons, so that might become an incorporated lesson. So yes, and hopefully in the future there will be more.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had one question on slide 15, which I think feeds from 14 on vaping. I'm
Let me
glad
go
to see
back
that
to
that's gone
15.
down.
15, you want me to go to 14 or 15?
Yeah, so I guess it's only 13% of respondents answered, correct? But
Yeah,
of
okay.
those,
Mhm.
it's 59% in and around school, right? Like in school bathrooms or in school areas other than bathrooms? Am I reading that right?
Well, I think it's better to look at the number there.
Yeah.
I mean, the proportion leads to the number.
Yeah.
So, and again, this would be your 8th, 9th, and 10th grader, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, so it's leaving out for the high school the 9th and 11th graders. There's going to definitely be overlap between the in-school bathrooms and other school areas. So it is important to try and understand that number.
Mhm.
I think Linda and I worked hard on this slide, really appreciate it, because it's not saying that 36% of our high schoolers are vaping in the bathroom. That's why some
Right.
initial drafts of this could indicate that. So I do think this does not match the narrative. We're in a public meeting. I will say that I'm a superintendent, understands the narrative is we have a lot of vaping going on in our bathrooms. That's a narrative. This would say that's a false narrative, assuming this is valid and reliable data. I have no reason to think that the students' responses around vaping is dramatically different, statistically significantly different than the other areas. Maybe a wee bit because some sense of vaping may be now more negatively taken. But this is, I even want a little separate note, that's the one aspect that I want to understand better, because this does not line up with the narrative.
So I guess my
This is better
question,
news for us than the narrative out there is. And I don't want to
Maybe.
put our students on the spot. but,
yeah, we won't put these students on the spot, right?
I mean,
But my
I know
question,
our
I guess-
administration works really hard to not have vaping going on in the bathroom.
Right, but
And
only so I don't think this is the full group that admitted to vaping. A bunch of them didn't answer this question, is how
So
I read it.
if you look at the
Ah,
question,
I
which
know
is
what
right
you mean.
underneath the where students vape, the question was, during the past year, did you use electronic vapor products at any of the following places? So only 44 out of the 348 students answered this question. Now, can you assume that the ones who did not answer the question are those that, don't vape at all? If you look at we use the 30-day, have you used vape, products in the past 30 days? Those are the questions we use to measure our use numbers. This is, you're not supposed to get, you really can't go back and forth between the two. First of all, one is about 30 days and one is about the past year, so it's different time periods. I think generally you're using this to see you just want to know where kids are using so that you can help target your prevention methods to where most students are using. And it is mostly at friend's house and at home. And yes, there is some in school bathrooms. I just want to make sure that we also understand that these students are the same. They're not unique students. So the same students that are vaping at their friend's house, I'm sure a subset of those might be vaping in the bathrooms. It's not, if you add them all up, it's obviously not. There's only 44 kids who reported vaping anywhere. And so these are all the places they said, and they could have checked off multiple places. So it's just for us to get a sense of where the activity is occurring so that we can target some prevention efforts to those places. Does that help clear that up?
Yeah, I think so, because I saw in a later slide, I think it was slide 29, there was something about the percentage of vaping was like 3 to 5 or something like that.
Can have been
In the
29.
challenges.
It was the
3 to
30, the
5?
30-day vaping was in the beginning. Let me go back to that. Oops, no, it should be right.
14 is past 30-day use of
Oh,
e-cigarettes.
e-cigarettes, thank you. I flipped right by like it was cigarettes. So, yeah, oh, you know what? I should actually look back if you want to see all students. This is broken down by 8th, 10th, and 12th. So the number is actually that very first slide when we talked about 30-day substance use. So e-cigarettes is the blue line, and that looks to be just above 10% of all the students that took the survey reported any vaping. So to dive into the number, it's a small number, which is good. Like we're happy to see that go down. So that's great.
Thank you.
I have a question for Eliana. Sorry to put you on the spot,
No,
but
it's
you
okay.
are
You would
our
share it.
student representative.
The
Does-
microphone.
Okay. Does this seem like an accurate snapshot to you of what you see in your community? I know that's a big question.
I know. I think,
For
well,
both of you, please.
I think overall, yes, it is representative. I also want to note that we said it follows the same cohort, right, from 10th to 12th. I know my year's taken it. I do think that substance use does vary greatly between each individual grade. So it does skip 1 year. But overall, I would say it's pretty representative.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think also one of the things is that in the health classes recently, there's been a lot more focus on substance abuse. And so I think that as the current, 9th graders and 10th graders are going through that health class, they're learning more about what Eliana was talking about as being taught through PL and through those trainings. So I think that there's a higher awareness that's happening, especially in the younger grades as well. So these trends might continue, might decrease, we'll see.
And I also want to note in terms of the sophomore health curriculum, I've had conversations about this with some of the kids in my year, and the lessons we learned about drugs and alcohol in health were some of the ones we took away and we remember the most. I think they're taught in a way that really sticks with us. I remember everyone made different slideshows about drugs and we all remember them somehow. So whatever we're doing, I think is working. And I also want to note that SAD Club and these CODA conferences, they've been very rewarding for me. And us seniors that are graduating from SAD Club, we definitely are trying to spread the word, spread the message for kids to join.
Thank you.
I have a question, and it might be very generationally biased, but I'm curious about the distinction between cigarette use and how highly that's disapproved of, and marijuana use is not. So do you have any insight, and I'm asking you, Ms. Vecina, and certainly the students if you feel comfortable, but I won't ask you guys to reveal anything you're uncomfortable with sharing, but that's always struck me as interesting that almost to a student that I've interacted with, and I happen to have a high schooler, but even their cohort of friends, cigarettes are really bad, but marijuana use is not. And I'm not understanding that disconnect.
I think it just has a lot to do with the messages that we're sending through the media and everywhere. You know, cigarettes, they did an amazing job letting people know that it was not healthy to smoke cigarettes. You know, it had, you know, the lung cancer, and there was all kinds of commercials and lots of media, and I think we did a great job of kids just recognizing that smoking was not healthy, not a good idea for anyone to do, and the kids really got that message. I compare it more so not even to marijuana, but also just to e-cigarettes. The reason that e-cigarettes got so popular is because youth were targeted. You know, the media companies, Juul, went right after them on social media, got all these influencers to use them and made them look cool, and, you know, youth were kind of sucked in. It wasn't their fault. And I think the same with marijuana, unfortunately. You know, the prevention voices are much quieter and don't have the money behind them to really, there's so much evidence around the negative effects of using marijuana when you're young, and how it affects brain development and learning and achievement, and is tied to depression and anxiety, and there's so many good reasons to delay. And the fact that it's now legal is not helping anything either. I mean, certainly I think when you see that it's okay to use when you're 21, they're like, how bad can it be for me as a high school student? So we just have to really continue to drive the message home that your brain, protect your brain. That is what is going to take you through life, and just delay. And that's
I get that, because, I mean, I know at least with vaping, even on the 5 years I've been on the board, you know, in 2019, you saw like how much personnel the district had to dedicate just to keep people, you know, swatting people away from the school so that it just wasn't overrun by people vaping. And then you had so many stories come out about how it really wrecked lungs. And it was so overt, and there was so much litigation that it became very much like the smoking industry. But it's just, it kind of boggles my mind how, like, there's not that connotation with marijuana. There just isn't, you know, and so I guess, you know, again, like that reflects kind of like my own perspective, I guess. But I don't, you know, obviously, like, it is legal now for adults, but it, you know, the ramifications that it has for the still developing mind, it just, it never fails to kind of like impress upon me that it's not.
Sylvia, it's a fascinating question, because the macro messaging has gone in two different directions.
Yeah.
Right, and even the last week, there's been more talk at the federal level of
Right,
pulling back
absolutely.
on regulations
Right.
on the use of marijuana. Now,
Right.
that's north of age 21.
Exactly.
But the macro message is, once you hit 21, it's increasingly fine and safe to smoke marijuana. So what does that mean sub-21? Whereas
Right.
the macro message for everything else is, it's terrible for you.
Right, I
at
don't
any
understand
age.
how you can
Well,
think
I-
like
I-
cigarettes are so
So,
horrible.
as
Yeah.
smart
I
as we
just-
all,
I
as
just
smart
have to
as we all
say-
are, you know, to be an adolescent is one to test and figure things out and try things. So if I'm being grossly simple on this macro message, hey, the message is telling, you know, give it a try. Right? So it's,
Yeah.
so
And
it's
that's-
a
I wanna-
fa-
I-
it's a
I
real,
would-
it's a fascinating question.
Yeah, I would add, I know in my college we had a discussion about this, and I'll just share it here because it's fascinating. Alcohol, you remember how, I'll use wine, right? But you remember how they put a positive thing into things, and that's why marijuana is the way it is. If you look at alcohol, when it's wine, they say it's good for the heart, and like the grapes or whatever, the cholesterol and all those things with the antitoxins in it. So they put that healthy spin on it. Marijuana with the CBD oil and all those things, there's that healthy spin connected to it. Cigarette nicotine has no healthy spin connected to it. So apart from the fact that they've put some age to it, and also they've scattered some healthy spin with it, they are not realizing that it's between marijuana is between the vibe of alcohol and prescription drug. That's where it sits. So it's not the variables with it. It's not like cigarette, and that's why it's the way it is. And And smoking is totally different from using it medicinally. You know what I mean? And so I think the
Yeah, and it's not
messaging
just
is all
smoking,
part of
right?
it.
Like, I think that I'm
messaging
glad
is
to
right.
hear that the health curriculum is so amazing. I was never suggesting it wasn't, I just don't know it, so I'm interested to learn it. But also, there are so many different ways to use marijuana, and it's the harm reduction piece. It's the really high potency. I mean, I'm sure you've all, THC levels are much higher than they were
Correct.
in the past, and then there are vapes and dabs, which have the incredibly high THC levels. So there are ways to talk about use. You know, obviously, no use is the
It's better.
safest, but there are ways to understand what are even more dangerous methods of use. So.
And to be honest with you, it's really, I wasn't saying this to taper, like I was just trying to speak to what Sylvia was saying. But even, you know how some people will mix, it's killing people, like you have no idea. It's dangerous. Like smoking is dangerous, period, even with adults. So, but this is not a health class, so I'll be quiet.
I just have some comments about the study. I find the study to be, well, it's nice to have. I think there are many flaws in it. I know you didn't write it. But to just go to one point that I was going to bring up, but I'll bring it up now, when you're like, why is smoking marijuana? Because if you look at the questions, it's smoke one or more packs of cigarette per day. Smoke marijuana once or twice a week. Have 5 or more drinks of alcoholic beverages once or twice a week. Like 5 or more. I think that they're leading the witness here.
I totally agree with you,
is.
Doreen. I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
The problem is the DFC program is.
No, I know you have to ask the question. I get
It's a grant that's
it.
national,
Totally.
and they use
But-
the data to
right.
compare it, and they gather it, so they would have to change the way. And I don't know
instruments,
why
yeah.
they ever
Totally.
decided
I mean,
to
if you
do it the way
said,
they did.
right, if the question here was, you know, like get high as a kite every day, you know, smoking pot, I think you'd see a much higher number than 29% for kids. Like if you actually compared it to abuse,
It's absolutely true.
which is what the other ones are. So I just like, it's good to have, but I don't want us to all throw in a panic that our kids think smoking is okay. You know, that might not be the
I
case.
think that's that particular slide, which
That particular
references
slide, right.
pack or multiple packs.
Exactly.
And the other ones do not actually.
Right.
When they say what's
But the-
worse, they just generally say smoking, binge drinking, prescription. They
However,
don't quantitatively say it,
I know,
but they
but-
still have that like peer, parents, societally, cigarettes are bad, but pot's still okay.
Got it.
I mean, again, I'm just more curious to understand,
Yeah.
and maybe again, this is probably where the students are most useful, like how it is that it lands on students that like nicotine's
The-
not, or
I'll
cigarettes
say
are
that
not
in
good.
terms of, especially in terms of the term binge drinking,
Right.
I know that probably using that term, kids will feel there's a much higher risk factor using the word binge drinking rather than being like, oh, 5 drinks, so, you know, like, what does that really equal? So it does, I think, lead the witness in some cases.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it's hard, you know, when you're looking at the cohorts, they're consistent, but they're actually, in some cases, they're going down, and the 12th graders now are going up compared to the numbers when you compare it over time. And then my other concern about the test is that it was done, the first 2 times it was done when they were high was, yes, pre-pandemic, but also April and May.
Yes.
When kids are, weather's nice, it's outside, the kids are about to graduate, and now we're doing it in November and December.
Oh,
I'm
that's
wondering
not
if we did the
consistent,
test now, if we did the survey now, what the answers would be.
We recognize that
that's-
numbers are definitely going to be higher in the spring than they are in the fall. And it's recommended, I mean, unfortunately, you have to work within the, you know, that, like, there's so many
So
other
much you
things
can't
going on in a
control.
school building. I think this, in fact, this survey was not, I think it was scheduled to be in October, but wound up getting pushed into November just because of other things that were happening within the school. I would vote to keep it in the fall. I think that's a more, I would prefer to do that than to have it in the spring. For whatever reasons, when we first did it, that's just when it landed. And then once we did it once, we wanted to keep it where it was just to compare the data. But when COVID gave us the opportunity to change it up, I do believe the fall is the recommended time to do these type of surveys. First of all, even just for the number of students that you get. If you look back in our earlier surveys, we did not have large numbers of seniors because, as Eliana just pointed out, they only have 2 more weeks of school, and they're often busy with lots of other things in the spring, and they just weren't in school the day that we would do the survey. So for many reasons, I think the fall is the place to land. Now that we're there, we should continue. We have another 2 surveys that we can do within the grant, and then obviously, I hope that it will continue. It's not a very expensive process to do this work, and part of the coalition's job will be to have some sustainability and find, hopefully somewhere that will continue doing
Yeah.
the surveys.
Do the kids, when they take it in school?
They do take it in school. They
And
all
are they
take it.
told it's confidential or
Yes.
anonymous?
Yes,
Is it confidential or is it anonymous?
it is both.
Yeah, we don't put our emails in
Or names.
or
Okay.
names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not supposed.
I mean, back before the last 2 surveys were done on their Chromebooks, but prior to that, they would go into the cafeteria and spread out and actually use, paper pencil surveys.
Yeah.
So there was some concern, but there's been studies that show that it does not, it's still a reliable survey to do it electronically, that they're not worried that their answers are going to be looked at.
Right. And then the only other thing I would say is that, there's good and bad to everything, and having the numbers go down is important. We don't want kids abusing drugs, but we've also, because I have to talk about technology, because I talk about that in every BOE meeting, kids aren't leaving the house, they don't care about learning to drive, they're not having sex. All of those numbers are going down, and substance use is going down. But it's because they're not hanging out with their friends and doing stuff. It's because
And
they're at
that's
home.
absolutely true and sad, and that may be one of the
Right.
reasons.
That was
it's-
a big message out of the screenology.
Yes, it
session.
absolutely was. It was discussed. We had
Yeah,
some
very
experts,
actively.
way better experts than myself, and that question came up. And Fred Munch, actually, I remember him commenting that it's partly is just socialization.
Yeah.
So while I see it as a positive, because that's what I focus on, certainly we want kids to be out doing healthy things, right?
Right, exactly.
Any other questions, comments? No?
No, so in 2 years, it'll be in the fall again, so at least we'll be like having,
Let's hope,
trying to have
I'm sure the superintendent will ensure that it's right when it should be.
No pressure.
I want to note that I do think that the numbers would be very different taking it in the fall and spring. I definitely agree with that. And earlier, Linda talked about sending messages toward the youth, and I want to say that I do think that the use of cigarettes have declined because of what she was saying about how strong those campaigns work. I remember being in elementary school learning about the dangers of cigarettes, but times are different, but we didn't have that about marijuana.
Right. So it'd be interesting to see if a marijuana dispensary opens in Hastings, what happens with our numbers. We'll see.
The dispensary would make buying marijuana under 21, it's illegal then.
Yeah, but it's much easier to get friends to buy it for you. I'm afraid the access will be easier than, that's my personal fear of having it, is that if it's right there, you can have somebody just buy it for you, versus you have to go to Yonkers to buy it for me, or whatever it might be.
One thing on that point, actually, about access, one of the things I've been thinking about and I'm wondering about is when you're discussing marijuana use, is there a specific form in which it was being talked about? So is this smoking, is this including edibles? What's the levels of this? Because I know that there's a
Yeah,
lot of different
Different
levels of
questions,
availability there.
right, different questions asked at different ways. Some specifically said smoking and some said use. And then some were specifically about vaping marijuana. I don't think we have a question particularly about edibles specifically. We do have the ability, and that's something I would be open to within the next 2 years. We have the ability to add our own questions. We also can change survey instruments. I mean, I haven't wanted to just because we've had this really robust
Right.
data to compare to. And those questions, the ones that you don't think are phrased right, are going to be phrased the same way in every question, every survey, because they have to be asked that way. But we certainly can add questions. Like if there are things that we want to know, we've done it in the past. We almost always add a few. So if there's something specific that we're really wanting to know, the only downside is they're the last ones, and you tend to, people get tired of answering the questions by the end. But actually, we had a relatively large number of students complete the entire survey, and it is fairly long. I would like to actually take some of the questions out that I don't find particularly helpful, just to make it shorter. But, and we could even do that.
Kai makes a very good point, because nobody's smoking cigarettes, so like smoking pot might be, a little passe. I don't know, I'm old. But edibles, for kids, that's the scary part, is because they taste delicious, and it's like you've grown up with gummy bears, so why not just have a gummy? But it'd be interesting to see if you can add on a question, just be like, are you more inclined to smoke? Are you more inclined to have a gummy? Are you more inclined to,
Right.
Yeah. Or around the risk, I see the risk question in the 12th grade. Only 29% of 12th graders found the perception of marijuana, right? So maybe some deeper dive into like, why don't you find it risky?
Right.
How would we change your mind? What kind of things would change your mind?
Would you consider it risky if it was done every day?
Right,
Not
like at
once
what
or twice
point?
a week,
And honestly, we don't have to wait 2 years to do that.
Yeah.
Like, as I said, I keep talking about doing focus groups. I haven't figured out exactly how to do them, but I would love to get some real, conversational data from some of the kids and learn a little bit more about their perspectives. And some of these questions could be, I think you'd probably get better data that way, rather than just a specific question that you have to check a box.
So I would just, on that note, we saw how, what just happened? I was going to say parents, but we saw how most of the use was parents allowed it in some of the, if not most of the data, right? So like we are talking about marijuana. There's also the alcohol part, the alcohol destroys the brains, including grown-ups. So, I'm just trying to figure out, like, the actionable way of dealing with all of it, not picking one over the other, because their impact is their impact. You know what I mean? It's not just, cigarettes are bad. Marijuana is bad. Alcohol is bad. That's why we are doing all of it. So e-cigarettes, vaping. So how would we work with all of them, whether they are here or in other spaces? You get what I mean? So we just have to find a way to actionably support our kids here. And that's what I would say that we focus on,
Thank you. Linda, there's no other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Linda.
much.
Thank
what
you
do.
for having me, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Moving on, thank you students for being vocal and involved. Here's your next chance, student reports, whoever is ready to go.
So I'll start us off. The high school music program has been hard at work in preparation for this Thursday's spring concert. So it's going to feature performances from the band, the orchestra, chorus, madrigals, sinfonia, jazz band, and so many other amazing, amazing groups. So this is the last high school performance before the play, which will be the final opportunity. And this is the last one for the seniors, too.
That's this weekend?
That's this Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday evening. Mm-hmm. Also, it actually might not be the last opportunity for orchestra, but maybe yes. But for other groups, I know June 1st is the River Arts Music Tour, and I believe the jazz band will perform at that. So speaking of the music seniors, there was recently a trip to Juilliard for all seniors who are involved in the Hastings music program. They saw some really incredible performances. I heard it was wonderful. Passover break was just last week. It feels like it has been years since then, but I know that everybody really appreciated the pause in our crazy test-riddled April spring schedule. And I heard so many people talking about being able to just spend time to relax and being to take a little time with their families, which was really nice.
Hadn't they just had a vacation like 2 weeks before?
Yes. It's spring. What can you say? We've got tests. So speaking of those tests, the dreaded AP exams start next week. So testing goes from May 6th until May 17th. So good luck to everybody involved. The FMS Science Fair was last Saturday. It was a really, really amazing success. There were over 20 middle schoolers who were competing, which was an incredible turnout. Each of these middle schoolers have spent the last few months really honing in on these projects that they came up with themselves. And there have been multiple sessions for the middle schoolers to work with the high school science research students. And so they got some guidance from their teachers and from high schoolers who are doing the same thing at a more advanced level. So it was really, really amazing to finally see the culmination of all that work. And speaking of science research, all of the juniors are registered for the Somers Science Fair. So this is going to be the first time that the juniors are competing and that they are presenting our projects. So it will be judged by adults who are in various science programs and also the seniors who have already completed all of this. So good luck to everybody who's involved.
Okay, bringing it back to last time I was here, I talked about Spirit Week leading up to Spring Pep Rally. So Wednesday the 17th was our wonderful Spring Pep Rally, and it was a lot of fun, total success. It was filled with lots of cheering, relay races, and even a couple of prom proposals. There was more than one.
What's a prom proposal?
A promposal, like
Proposal.
you
You
hold a sign up like prom, and everyone cheers, and yeah.
I'd act it out, but I'd get in trouble at home.
And involve big signs.
Yeah. A lot of fun.
So cute.
Yeah. The sophomores won the Spirit Week competition, so they dressed up the most that week.
Good show.
Yep. Congrats to the sophomores. So they will receive an ice cream party now. There was also a teacher balloon stomping competition that went on for a very long time, actually. But lovely Miss Stern won at the end.
After a lot of dicey movement going on there.
Yep. The circle they were fighting in kept getting smaller and smaller. All the sports teams, the spring sports teams, performed dances, and the winning performance was from the varsity softball team. And finally, at the end of the pep rally, the senior SU members came out with 6 American flags to announce that the senior trip will be to Six Flags. We'll be going in June. The seniors also have another ice cream party. Somehow there's always an ice cream party going on in the building, but this one will be on Friday for our win in the Olympics a while ago. Friday will also be our unofficial Wear Your College Merch Day, but our slightly more official commitment day will be May 15th. Usually it's May 1st, but it was pushed back because of all the financial aid issues that have been happening this year. Now in PL, we're into the next phase of those PL applications for the juniors. So this week are the group interviews for the juniors during lunch. Other exciting news, members of the Environmental Club have been going around to different science classes this week discussing the $50,000 grant Hastings has just received to spend on youth-led environmental projects. A few sports updates. Senior Billy Murnigan was nominated for LoHUD's Baseball Player of the Week, so huge congrats. That also feels like something Hastings has a lot of. I feel like every week it's another kid that's outstanding and amazing, and it shows to how much our sports are, how well they're doing and how much we're improving. Yeah. Varsity baseball and softball are both continuing games this week that were previously rained out mid-game, both against Dobbs, so good luck to those. And as of right now, our boys baseball team has a winning record of winning 8 out of their 11 games. So we're doing great. And now to what I think is the biggest announcement of the night. Our Quiz Bowl team won the National Quiz Bowl Small School Competition this past week. Yep, they flew out. Yep, nope. Yep. They flew out to Chicago this past week, and out of 88 schools, they won all of their matches, 2 days. They won everything by a landslide. There's this huge trophy that's taller than me in the lobby.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And now they're going to enter the all high school nationals. So they have some crazy ranking in country. So next time, hopefully, I'll tell you what that is. So huge congrats to first their advisor, Mr. Wilson, and our A team of seniors, Benny Feldman, Owen Linder, Hazel Dupree-Selvin, and Jacob Goldman-Wetzler. Congrats. Like, it's crazy. And to end it off, I would like to say that including the AP test days, the seniors only have 14 days left in the building.
Oh my God.
We have put up a countdown in the lobby that is not celebratory. It is sad. Really, we feel like it's a great grade that I feel like I'm part of, and I'm very fortunate to be with such amazing kids. So it's emotional these couple weeks, but yeah.
Why is that? Because
What?
why is it only 2 weeks?
Internships.
Internships, yeah.
Internships are starting?
Senior
Yeah.
internships.
What happens if you didn't get an internship? Do you just hang out at home?
Make one up, right?
Yeah, well, everyone has to have
You
one.
have to.
Oh, everyone has
Yeah.
to have one. Got it.
You can make up your own internship,
Got
which
it.
some people do. But basically, you could do anything if you're with a project.
Got it.
Yeah.
14 days.
I know.
I have a senior, so I'm like, I remember all you when you were little. It's
I know.
weird. Thank you. Thank you both very much. Thank you, Linda.
Kai and I are going to sneak out now,
That's fine, of
study
course.
for APs.
Right.
Good luck. Thanks for the reports.
Thank you, guys.
We'll open up for public comment. Doesn't seem like there is any public. Who
Well,
wants to comment?
I mean, right, exactly, come
Lots of
on.
public. but-
Right.
Okay. Move on to update and district highlights from our superintendent.
It's all in writing, but as Ilian and Kai run out, they are going on the road, and it's an honor. June 3rd, they've been invited to be speakers at the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, and it's proof that people watch, because Karen Bellinger, who's the executive director of that organization, had watched our meetings, watched you two on live or whatever, doing what you do, and so they've asked you on June 3rd to go speak at the luncheon as examples of what student liaisons can do. So that has prompted actually the board president and me to attend our first meeting in a while. I am in a public meeting saying that. Sorry, Karen, if you're watching. But thanks to our liaisons, we will be there to cheer them on. Humor aside, it's a big honor to be picked to do this. So congrats. That's the main thing I would.
guys.
Good job.
Well deserved. Highlight of the meeting. Right. Yay, student reps.
All right.
Everything else you can read. Other than one thing I would mention, we have two things. We've started an Instagram account. I want to thank Jackie Saviano for getting that off the ground. It'll continue. That is an important way to keep in touch with things. And lastly, because Tri-State Consortium is such an important partnership for us, they do have an new executive director named, who's listed in here, Andrew Selznick. I am on the steering committee of the governing board for Tri-State. This was a lot of work. Marty Brooks, many of you know, Dr. Brooks is 16 years in that executive director seat. He's an essential individual for so many of us here, both for the district, but for many of us individually. So giant shoes to fill, but we are pleased that Andrew Selznick was chosen to go into that role. And I'll put something out in the Friday letter on this, because while Tri-State is a bit behind the scenes, they're our most important partnership and membership in many ways. And we do want to, going forward, try and take more advantage of it as a professional learning opportunity for our administrators and faculty. So that's what I have to share.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Makesi, we wanted to also let the community know from the communications and engagement meeting about non-parents being able to join the mailing list. It's directly on the website now.
Yeah.
So I because you mentioned it, I just wanted to just say that the non-parents and non-guardians, which Hastings is more than half of them are, sometimes they want to know what's going on in the schools, and they can by signing up on the mailing list so that at least they know how everything is going, because they are also paying taxes, into the school. So I just wanted to announce that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Moving on to administrator's report from Dr. Szymанski.
So mine is also memorialized in writing. I just wanted to point out that I provided some updates on the social studies work that's been happening district-wide, the revision to Courageous Conversations that's been happening, both of which will receive another update at our next Board of Education meeting, and also an update on diversity committee work.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to administrative report from our business official, Maureen Caraballo.
Do you want me just to highlight the state aid bill?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
So the report on the state aid is in the record, but again, just to update the board publicly that the state budget was enacted after the board actually adopted the budget. And we are happy to find that the hold harmless provision that was initially proposed by Governor Hochul to be eliminated has been pushed off at least for a year. So what does that mean for Hastings? It means that what the initial proposal on our state aid, foundation aid in particular, which would have resulted in roughly about a $200,000 loss in state aid, has been restored through the negotiations on the state budget. But again, what was reported out at least was that a lot of these things would be brought back next year as part of the proposal. But for this year, they being that it was kind of just sort of put on everyone, not knowing what the state aid numbers would look like. So when we did our budget this year, we had recommended increasing our appropriation of fund balance to close those funding gaps in the hopes that this would in fact be restored. So in terms of our budget does not need to be modified in any way. It just means that instead of putting more money out of our savings account to balance our budget, we'll be able to pull back about $200,000 of those dollars.
So it turns out that cutting school budgets isn't politically prudent for a governor to do, I guess. That's good for us.
It is, but in some ways, although some of these other things didn't go through, the initial commitment to what the funding of foundation aid was proposed the previous year, that the governor said that they would be providing a higher level of increase, like the actual increase to foundation aid each year is supposed to be a certain percentage. It is not. We still didn't receive what was previously promised to us, which I think anyone who does this type of work kind of felt that there would be no way, because the state really doesn't have that type of money to provide that type of funding. So, but yes, I think you're right. I think they kind of backed off on that, but I think there's within the messaging of the budget was to say that the state really doesn't have the funding to continue, so that there will need to be some other revisions moving forward. It's just not clear yet what they may be.
Yeah, well, I would say, not just beyond the messaging, part of the budget agreement was to set up, the governor has tasked the Rockefeller Institute with redoing the foundation aid formula, and then given them a 12-month, window. So it's going to be, it's going to come right back in a stronger political form next session.
Right. And as an example, looking at, we've talked about this during our budget process about, how is state aid or foundation aid, how is the funding, what is the formula behind it? I, spoke to the number of factors, but as an example, Hastings, just in this, not unlike other of our neighbors, in this past year, the wealth factor actually has got up even further, meaning that would, potentially, if there was an upgrade to like the formula, or if that is going to continue to be one of the most prevalent ways to determine state aid, whatever you want to call the formula, we will then see a reduction in aid just by virtue of that, right? So I think that's the piece in which, it's tricky, because it really, the formula is set up to drive aid to the higher needs districts, and there's only a certain amount of dollars available. So I think that's something where, as we, continue similarly, it's just to give districts, all districts are kind of looking at this is, okay, in the next 12 months, we need to be really looking at our budget, because we already are being kind of warned that there will be less money from the state moving forward. just based on their ability to fund it. I mean, it's just, they only have a certain amount of dollars as well, so.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Moving on to business items. Are there any questions on business items 1 through 7?
I just had a question about number 4. So is that basically that Mr. Urbino is going to be teaching Mr. Friedman about how to properly be a band leader? Like, I don't know if I'm wording it correctly.
So, yes, that's the transition plan, and actually I met with Doug to actually design this and was asked, I provided some possibilities for him, and he said what he believed would be most valuable was that transition time. And he flagged some background that he did have with instrumental music, and then talked about just getting up to speed with certain things, and I thought it made all the sense in the world. And so he collaboratively designed this, and that's what you're seeing on the agenda.
That's cool.
Yeah. I was happy to see that was, given the circumstances that was offered. And that's an opportunity, it's fair to say that's open to other members of the department to that's.
Yeah, so there isn't a substantive shift in terms of the area in which other staff members are teaching based on the assignments that I provided, but anyone who needs professional learning, I mean, we really support that in the district. We want to make sure that people have opportunities not only to support areas where they feel like they want some growth, but also thinking about continuous learning to be able to move to the next level.
Thank you. Any other questions about business items 1 through 7?
Quest Star, I'm just trying to understand.
Number 6.
Sure.
Number 6 is
Yeah, so
assist the district with special education aid and aid claim process.
yes.
So it's like a platform.
Yes, so, well, it's a service, so there's a process when there's special ed students and the cost of educating them exceeds a certain threshold, and the process is called stacking the students. So in addition to other types of reporting, those individual students, we fill out reports and submit them to the state in hopes that that's part of our state aid package. When we had a transition in the special ed office, and I don't know if you recall, next year we're kind of consolidating some functions within our clerical staff. In speaking to some of my counterparts, they recommended, it seems as though most people are using Questar to assist in that, because not only do they have expertise in helping districts get, help maximize the amount of aid we receive back for these type of services. So it's for the dollars, and it's $6,500, which is BOCES aidable. So it'll roughly cost us about $3,000 a year. But what other districts are reporting is they believe that has helped increase the amount of state aid that is driven on for these type of students, because we have to stack them anyway, but there's ways that they're able to kind of capture more, I think, other costs. So there's direct student costs, and there can be other auxiliary costs that are captured in those claims. So districts, feel that it's a valuable service as they help, districts navigate those, that process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to highlight too, with some of the budget transfers, some of it, and we anticipate more, we're still, dealing, although we don't have our full proposals yet, sorry. Sheesh. With all the rain damage from, obviously not recently, we're still, our fields did take quite a battering. Most of the damage with the rainfall this spring, there was a lot of deterioration on our fields. So that was way beyond what our normal field maintenance is. So you'll see where there's transfers just for the needs. Those are kind of repairs that are beyond what we anticipated. And also, beyond that, the fact that the costs keep escalating throughout the year. But we anticipate also seeing some additional repairs needed to Burke Estate for the significant erosion we're finding on the back end of the fields due to the heavy volumes of water that are way beyond what it was designed to hold. So these are kind of things just to make things playable, and Joe's been bringing more soil and different things to ensure we're just having some divots and things within the field. So it's requiring more material to be brought in, a lot of it washed off, and again, that's a smaller number. And then also with cameras, just want to highlight, we've been having, we continue to I mean, cameras are a great tool for us, but especially outside, we've had some damage and vandalism even recently, as up to this weekend, on our fields, and the cameras do assist us in that, and also our security really relies on them. So there are quite a few areas that were identified. If something happens, you identify areas that you don't have coverage, and cameras are extremely expensive. In addition to, we're trying to put some more in the stairwells and things like that, because right now we have no coverage in those areas, and there are areas that if somebody wanted to do something bad, but even just in general of accidents or, things that occur, that we want to ensure we have that. So these things have kind of just recently popped up, but there is a need to put those cameras in and get that work done this year, as well as this water testing. Okay.
Thank you.
I just have one question
Sure.
about the interscholastic athletic merger. Are there costs involved with that? Or with those, I should say? I saw that it's $600 for attorney fees, but is that basically the only fee? Do we pay for busing students to Hastings for the wrestling? Like, what are the
So-
costs involved in those?
So each one is a bit different. The ice hockey, so our participation with ice hockey, we pay all the teams involved. The total cost of the team, I think their parents actually do pay for some of the ice time, but whatever the entire cost that are that the host school, which is Mount Pleasant in this case, they'll divide that out by the number of participants each school. So we're just billed exactly what the total cost is, and then you're billed per person, which is actually not bad, because then, sometimes if you had less students, you're being billed just like a half of it, it wouldn't be great. Flag football, we're the lead
But
organization.
when you say it's per person, I'm sorry, Maureen, do you
Per-
mean like $100 a person?
Oh, no,
$1,000
it's,
a person?
no, I would say our ice hockey, I want to say, so as we look at the, ice hockey is a more expensive sport. I think we all know that. So I want to say that it's at least $1,000 per student, if not higher, 1,200. And so if there's 5 or 6 students that participate, the cost for us is $6,000. But although that's a more expensive sport, girls flag football, I believe there's only five of our own students, or 6, that are participating on that team, with the remainder coming from other schools. Those other schools do not pay us. So especially with the special act schools, we allow them to participate, but they don't pay us a fee back. So we're just taking their students' order to run the team, I guess. But as an example, that would technically cost us more per our own student, because we have less students, although the cost, should be relatively low.
Right, so we're just paying for the coach in
Yeah.
that case.
We're paying for the coach and all the league fees and all the referee fees and the uniform. So beyond coaching, there's a lot of expenses, and we also pay for the buses to go to our competitors.
Right, and then the wrestling one, the other schools involved are Clark
Yeah.
and Greenberg, so does that mean that we pay for them to come here, or they have to pay for
Well,
themselves to come
they
here?
they get themselves here, but they don't pay us. So in most cases, you share, like we pay, when we're associated with like Artsy, we pay, but the special act schools, I don't think they would have the ability to pay to us, so we just allow them to join.
Got it, so in those, I'm just trying to figure out what the cost of something is,
I mean, the swimming teams are extremely expensive for us to
So
participate
we
in.
had built, we can get you these numbers
Yeah.
broken out. I think that'd probably be important going forward. The ones up through volleyball were all built in and are ongoing. Volleyball's new, and that's also why you see very definite language there about who's covering what, because we were not gonna bring it to the board unless we knew that we had no added costs here, because this is new. And we are saying we have a very robust athletic program, lots of opportunities. We are indicating that we have to hold the line and not be doing more unless we can do it within existing resources. So we have been doing all those. I think it probably might take us a little bit to get it to you, but we should break out just so it's clear, because we have been paying attention going forward to, again, we have a very robust program, lots of opportunity going into the new year, next budget cycle, meaning, because this budget's set and everything but volleyball's included, we may have to say, can we keep these various pieces going? But again, to repeat myself, sorry, but the volleyball boys is new, and that's why you see very definite language as to who's paying for what. and the commitment that will be fully covered for by Clark and Greenberg.
Thanks. I'm sure, I just don't have a adequate grip on how much it is. And we've been having conversations the past few weeks about how children aren't offered one-on-one music lessons, but in some of these cases, it is very individualized. There's like 1, 2, or 3 kids doing it. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but it is something to consider that's very specific, and depending on the cost, if it doesn't cost anything, if the cost is minimal, it doesn't matter. But if the cost is a lot, it's something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, there were
Yeah, I think
not
we just come
recently,
back with
yeah.
the answer. I think
No,
we should-
yeah, and I think those are the type of analysis we'll have to do over the next year, because in times where we've had tighter budgets, those, especially with everything, not only athletics, but all programs, that type of analysis has been done, and there were years we didn't offer certain things because of it,
Yeah,
because of the individual cost of a particular
Yeah.
sports.
and these do flex a lot depending
Yeah.
on the individuals.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excuse me. Any other questions or comments regarding budget items, business items, sorry? 1 through 7? Is there a motion to approve our business items?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to placement and services for CSE and CPSE. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve our placement and services for CSE and CPSE?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to personnel as a consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments regarding our appointments or our leaves of absence? Is there a motion to approve our appointments and our leaves of absence?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to minutes. Excuse me. These would be for the April 16th meeting. Are there any questions or comments regarding our minutes? Is there a motion to approve our minutes from the April 16th meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second read of policies. So we are voting on these, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the parent and family engagement policies that we looked at. I think it's another session ago. Is there any sort of small executive summary that's?
Maureen.
I have some stuff. I can,
just a little
Oh,
refresher?
sorry, Teresa.
I took notes.
Awesome.
So it was recommended to do a survey of parental engagement with roundtable discussions. We talked about
All
that.
right.
Where parents can offer feedback on the actual parent and family engagement policy. Dr. McCursey mentioned doing something in early June. Is that accurate?
That was tentative, and the more I look at it, may have to push to the fall. I mean, trying to get stuff done now. But yes, so the simple statement is, per the policy, we are required to do an evaluation. And the understanding of the committee was the best way to do that initially would be roundtables, and legal counsel said that perfectly meets the requirement. So maybe start with that. Whether those I'm gonna try for June, but it may push a little later. But
Okay.
That's it.
Now that you mention it, I do remember you guys talking about it before. Okay. And then we have policy 5151, and then I see, okay. So we're just voting on the 2 policies, not for the sample regulation is here for informational purposes, or?
No, we didn't have a regulation.
Oh, this is, okay, so we're just using their sample. Gotcha. Okay. Are there any questions or comments regarding policy 1900, 5151, or 5151R? No? Is there a motion to approve policies 1900, 5151, 5151R?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to second public comment. No one commenting, so we'll move on to gender review. We're going to be into May now.
yeah, I could just highlight a couple things.
Sure.
We do have, if we noticed, I don't know if the board has, we have back-to-back meetings, so we're back with you next week. We
Yeah.
enjoy you so much. So there is a budget hearing that opens up the session. It is, other than that, a light meeting. At the same time, it includes one of the most exciting items for you all year, and that's the science research presentations. So Ms. Shandroff will be here with several of her students. That's been done in the past, certainly last year. Big hit, and we'll do that again. We may, will depend on, because of the hearing, we may move upstairs for that, but we'll let you know ahead of time. On the 21st, that's straightforward, but it's a big, big day. 2 significant sets of votes that day, and then the meeting you see listed there. Let me just jump down to June 11th. I mean, the 29th of May is pretty straightforward, but let me just flag on the 11th, very good recommendation from our administrators that instead of having celebrations for tenure on the 11th and retirement on the 25th of June, to combine those into a single celebration. Your board president and vice president agreed. So that's where, if we could plan our time, so 5 o'clock on the 11th, we'll have a reception, which we'll try and make a very significant one. We're actually we're gonna meet up at Hillside for that meeting, because we think that setting will work quite well to make it that much more interesting and special. You've not met up there as a board, and we think we can arrange that space to be both celebratory for both the tenure recipients and the retirees, and then flow right into the meeting. We may juggle that public comment opportunity for the emergency. We don't tend to people come out, but we'll just check the flow on that, because you do have, beyond the reception for the tenure and retirement, you do actually do something formal in the meeting. But assuming the whole board agrees, we thought that was a nice way to do it. Also, the 25th of June is the last day of school. So having retirees or tenure recipients come out that evening is probably a little awkward, to put it one way. But we would rather try a combined gathering. And then last change that's very important is that Melissa and I, Szymanski and I, Dr. Szymanski, provide you a State of the District report. Last year we did it in July. That would be at the forming of the new board. But the advantage of that July 9 meeting is we have all the data and all the information, and it's a little easier to do it at that point. So that's the one change. We'd move that into that meeting from the June 25th meeting. So a little more detail and looking at the agenda, but there was been some changes, so that's why I wanted to give you that information.
Oh, thank you. Now it gets busy.
Yes.
So thank you. Moving on to Board of Education comments.
I just have a question. I'm sorry if I'm spacing on this. Did we officially send out notification about the give back days and the days that they're going to be off? Did we do that?
Yes.
It's reflected on
We
the
did.
calendar.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
so if you look at the calendar online, it reflects all of that.
And we sent out
And
notification
yeah,
to
it
the
was in-
families?
yeah, we
Sorry
can
if I
remind-
totally missed that,
Yeah,
Bill.
it was in one of the incredibly well-read Friday letters. So we can send out I'm glad you all
It
saw
might be
that.
good to include it in the weekly letter as like a, like one of the
Or I
top
may just
things.
have-
If
I had
it
done
hasn't
that.
been put in that yet?
Yeah, no, it had. It'd been in there,
Okay.
so I think.
All right, so maybe I'm the only one who didn't see it, so
Yeah.
ignore me.
We can remind
You're
people.
in the same way, aren't you?
No.
I'm looking, I only have 15 items for this Friday letter.
Only
Right.
15.
So it's
No,
Friday
we'll
and
get it
Tuesday
out.
and the last
It's gonna be
day,
a proper
right?
pamphlet.
Yeah.
I do have a elaborate board comment. On DEI, that is something that I had mentioned that I had prepared a while ago, but then I wanted to give space to the music concern, and
Excuse me.
thank God we are all very content with our budget at this point, so I'm very happy about that. But, oh my goodness. It's, okay. Okay, I will be very stiff. Okay, so just like Doreen would say, I'm not going to let go of technology. I'm not going to let go of DEI because I feel like I sincerely believe that Hastings can be the pace setter for a good work to be done when it comes to DEI. And we all know what is happening even in higher ed, in colleges, only because of DEI not being what DEI should be, and hence the aftermath of it, it's very tangible. And Hastings is part of the world. We are not immune to it. And I just want to share what my take is in our school. And I'm hoping that when the presentation happens next meeting, right, is what we scheduled it to be, some of these concerns can be addressed. So
You briefly mentioned an update.
you mentioned you were going
Just
to
in my administrative comments, yes, and I will be providing more information. on it,
next,
yes.
yeah. So I'm just going to, I'm happy it's not being done now, so that at least when that happens, some of what I'm going to, concerns I'm going to share can be addressed at that time. But I just want to say that I'm very grateful to my colleagues, Alex and Doreen. When it comes to the DEI policy, I would say that the three of us came on the same ticket, and we plunged. I think when I say P, oh no, it's not a P. I'm just trying to. So anyway, we got plunged into the DEI space, and I did not know these two wonderful people, and they are wonderful. And carrying that burden in my heart, I'm grateful that we listened to each other and came up with, we were the pioneers of having the first DEI policy, which was not mandated by the state at that time, and had it instated. And Dr. Samansky was there with us, and of course, Dr. Makesi, as we worked through it to create that policy. I told you it's a P. That policy, I shouldn't be, that policy, and also everything that it's moving on with it. I also want to say that I know that the district has done a lot of great work, and every work is always requires continuous improvement. So whatever I'm about to share has some personalized examples about it, only for us to tangibly understand where I'm coming from, not because I'm thinking Hastings, our school district, or even Hastings as a community is not committed. We are committed. There will be mistakes on the way, but hey, we are committed and we'll keep moving forward. So with that said, what I am seeing is that our DI work across board, not just in Hastings, looks promising on paper. It looks very promising on paper. My concern has always been about implementation, and how it's being done in a way that harm is not continued, and biases and negative stereotypes are not reinforced. I have always said that this process is very challenging, and in talking to different community members that show vulnerability to me, they are like, you know what, let's abolish it. Let's just get rid of it, because it's really not cutting it. And but what I would say, and those individuals, we've shared those conversations tete-a-tete, is that eliminating DEI won't resolve existing issues. It will actually make it worse. And I'm not saying that's what we are going to do in the schools, but I know that's what is within is what is somewhat brewing outside of the school. But I know the school is committed, so thank God for that. Because just doing it, it's going to create an illusion of solving problems as a way of ignoring it, when it will be there and it's going to be worse. And let me elaborate that further. So if you think about, I'm going to compare, I like to compare things. If you think about healthcare, right, is there primarily to address the physical well-being? Okay, our physical well-being. DEI is there to address and support the social well-being of everyone. And so the fact that, let's say, a healthcare is currently not meeting, cutting it, because it's not really, for whatever reason, it's not fulfilling as much as it's supposed to fulfill, doesn't mean you should get rid of healthcare. You get what I mean? You want to find ways to improve it and not to say, let's get rid of it. It's the same way with DI, it's for social well-being. And we have to find a way to do it well and not to say, get rid of it. And so that is the nuance of it. And I want to share a personal story. I mean, we know yesterday at Dobbs Ferry, it was announced by the police how a black guy, I mean, I'm not sure if some of you heard it, was a local black person. Somehow, someone from another place who is not local, who is not black, was accusing, falsely accusing this guy of what was the exact stuff that this person accused. They were at the waterfront park in Dobbs Ferry, and falsely accused this local black person minding his business in this beautiful weather, that this black guy was threatening him, okay, who wasn't a local, and children at the waterfront park, and they did the investigation. Now, this has P, I'm telling you, it's a P. This has personally happened to me. I ordered food at Sushi Mike. I was going to pick it up. At that time, my mom was with me. You saw my mom. My mom was with me and my son, Milo, who's a mixed kid. And I parked in front an open space right in front of another convertible car. And it was an open space. I'm going to pick up whatever food we've ordered. And this white guy, as soon as I got out of the car, said, "Why did I park in that space in front of him?" And I was like, is it not a parking spot? He's like, "It is a parking spot, but you park in front of me. I'm going to call the police on you." I kid you not. I know this is being recorded, okay? In our neighborhood, Dobbs Ferry, okay? Now, I was so furious, and if I was light-skinned, you would see me very red. But was I surprised? No. I have seen how when my husband is with me, I'm treated differently. If John was with me, he wouldn't dare even look at me, let alone open his smelly mouth to say that to me. And he wasn't stopping till a young white boy, and I think he's a Mercy College student, started filming. And if that guy is listening to me, I want to have that video, because I have started collecting data. Because anecdotal information doesn't go anywhere in recent times. Like, And if that person is hearing me, if you have that video, please, please, please. Somehow, I want to have it. And it took this student, I think he was a student, but he was a young white guy. He was walking. It just happened he was walking, taking his phone to film it for this person to be quiet, you know? So, when this thing happened yesterday, when the police said about this black local guy, and people told me by virtue of what I do in the community, and I wasn't surprised. They were shocked I wasn't surprised, because I'm like, it's happened to me, you know? And so it's when you are the one getting sick all the time, by virtue of it's your lived experience. No one can live your experience. And as much as people is like, oh, you know, if you are the one getting sick, you want the health care. You get what I mean? And there's so much more I can express. My younger brother, who is the smartest person I know, he going to high school at the age of 7 and blah, blah, blah. We used to, anyway, he faces so much. Like, you go to a store and you pick up something little, he's like, you know, his son dying of cancer. I picked a toy he wanted, gave it to him, and I'm going to pay it. He's like, no. You know, they would think you are shoplifting. Like, you are always this. I know some of you may know this, but I'm now sharing my personal encounter with my family. And so when I am pushing DEI, I'm not just trying to be annoying. It's important. And right now I sit here, my husband and I are trying to get our son to unlearn. Like, I have been public about the fact that he's IEP. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of his neurodiversity. But he's never, ever found himself to be different as a neurodiverse person. But now we are trying to get him to unlearn some kind of pseudo P, I told you it's P, a pseudo process that happened that till date, he says, Mommy, Mommy and I are different and not normal. And Daddy is Mommy and I are different and not normal. Daddy is normal and not different, because he has language. And my husband and I are trying to let him unlearn it. He's not even seen that with but he's seen that with color. How did this happen? When he has cousins and families that are mixed. So, and it again, I'm just begging that the work of DI cannot be paperwork. It cannot just be paper. I prefer there is no paper and the work is being done. And I'm begging. I am begging the school that look into the eyes of kids that are, like yesterday we got a letter from the school with the N-word again. Is the N the only slur ethnic word in our world? But yes, still that is being reinforced. Why can't we, like I always say, the backyard work? Kids, I'm not asking us to snitch on our kids. I'm not asking us to penalize our kids. Kids are kids, but when they do something, they say an F word. They say an F word, you look them dead in the eye and say, not again. That's it. You don't need to create any paperwork. And they would not do it. We know how to give the stare. We know how to be emphatic, and that's it. Let's treat them like our own children. I do that in my backyard. I don't care who said what. I don't care who said anything. It's irrelevant. Of course, I will call the parents and say that I sorted it out in the backyard. Please, because these things are impacting children, kids. I have a big mouth. I can do my own insults, but please, it's okay. I'm going to be quick. I'm sorry. I just needed to pour this out. But so I just have 3 sentences that I want to read about DEI. D, diversity, E, equity, I, inclusion. Diversity isn't a melting pot. It comprises diverse perceptions, elements, values, identities, just name it. And each of it has its own significance within that. Equity isn't a monopoly. It's about creating space for all these diverse elements to thrive. And thirdly, inclusion is not obscuring because, again, it's not a melting pot thing, but it's a way to strengthen each diverse aspect of what the human existence embodies. And the last thing I would like to share is that having intersectionality work and affinity group work, and I've had a conversation with some individuals in IWG, is something that I think we need to give room for people to sit in spaces that they can grieve when they want to grieve. And I want to use Doreen and Teresa as an example. I always use Doreen as an example. Always. I can't help it. I'm going to miss you. So remember with the whole societal crazy that happened, Doreen was in this, and I said both of them were right, and a lot of people had asked me, how can you just be sitting here, idealistic head woven around saying, Teresa is right about the Palestinian and you are right about the Israeli, like what were you talking about? And I want to demonstrate what I meant. At that time, looking in the eyes of Doreen, she was grieving and needed an affinity group support for what her lived experience were. And also listening to your voice as you were trying to find words to speak, you were concerned about families outside of Hamas that were being harmed and they needed that support. And me sitting here, because it's not my lived experience, I was ready for this intersectionality work, looking something like this, okay? Where I'm like, you know, why can't both groups, you know, just let's you know, because I do ethnicity work in the community, that was my thing. And I posted at one point 2 little kids holding each other, one in Israeli flag, one in Palestinian flag, you know, and others were not having it. But for me, where I was sitting, this is where was the intersectionality thing that I wanted to create. Now, is there mutually exclusivity to this? No. There were people like myself who were ready for this. There were people like Doreen who was just ready for an affinity group like this. And there were people, I'm just using as an example, I'm not saying that's where you were sitting. And there were people like Teresa who was ready for an affinity group like this, for them to heal. This is the work of diversity. How are you going to navigate spaces to place people for them not to, because you are here, you are going to hate on this, because you are here, you're going to hate on this, because I'm here, I'm going to hate on this. That navigation piece is what I keep talking about. And I'm saying this from an informed place. Because when emotions hit, this, we all know this will not come to play. When emotions hit me, I check this in the garbage. I kid you not. That's me personally. I know Alex has caught me on that side before. You know, Alex is very like, okay, being all nice to me. And I am emotionally taxed with something that has happened to me personally, and I chuck my higher centers someplace else. Because when your amygdala hits, now it takes over. And so that's why I keep asking that when we have a team of dedicated volunteers, you can't force DEI on anybody. It's like forcing people to become health care workers. You cannot. So when we have a team of volunteers, be it staff and faculty, they together with an expert navigator, and when I want to explicitly say that when I set the DI position, I told you it's a P. When I set the DI coordinator or director position, I want to clearly, emphatically say, because some people have reached out to me about, oh, too many administrators in the school. When I mentioned the administrator word, it was a wrong choice of word. What I meant was the role should have the relevance. An expert person doesn't have to be whoever is there right now, but the role should have an expert navigator with these volunteers who are willing to do this work, trained to navigate this process of work. Because that expert person is coming from an informed place to navigate to who is ready to sit where, to allow the harmony to happen. And with that, the role that I was saying was that if it's a teacher on special assignment, the impact is not the same as that of a school psychologist who is still under the teacher line. School psychologists in this school are not administrators. They are not HAA. They are Hastings. They are under the Hastings Teacher Association teacher line. So that's what I was trying to say with the relevance of it. That way, that work can truly be done. Because what is happening I am doing my second doctorate at Columbia. I did not step. I have a child. I'm not going to go on campus. Even when they said it's safe, I'm not. I'm sorry. Whatever the heck I think I'm going to learn, forget it. I stayed at home. So, and look at what is happening, you know. And we are the educators that are teaching these things, but how are we even implementing it? Even in our own Ivy Leagues that we think we are teaching these things. You get what I'm trying to say? Because again, when your emotions hit, forget this. And so I'm begging all of us to just, I know you, and I can't end without thanking Dr. Samansky. I really want to take this opportunity. I know that I have always been looking at how we will improve things, but Dr. Samansky has always been an ally, even outside of the school, and I want to take this opportunity to recognize her because I know I just keep, because she's in charge, who else can I push than her? So thank you for all the work that you've been doing, and I know you will continue to do a good work. I love your data-driven mind because I'm right there, and thank you, Dr. Samansky. Thank you, everyone.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you. Any other board comments?
No, just thanks for sharing that, Damaris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? No? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.